Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehakol nהיה b'dbarei.
Amen.
Oh, that was powerful, heavenly voice, huh? Chaim v'chaim v'roch, everybody. Good tavoch, shavua tov, a good week. And as always, we begin the week with the Torah portion. I mean, we started already this morning, but we continue now. Actually, we're going to go into depth into something that we learned this morning. But before that, I've mentioned this many times. You've heard it from me before. And please, who remembers, what is Lefi Ani Azdaiti, according to my humble opinion, what's the source of all malady? What's the source of all problems? Anybody?
The answer.
Huh?
I know the answer.
You know the answer? Anybody else here? So what is it?
It's feeling independent.
Feeling independent, feeling alone. Feeling alone. You could be alone, but to feel alone. You could be in a crowd with many friends and family and feel alone. You could be in a room all by yourself and feel connected. Right. The beginning of all problems, all maladies, spiritual, physical, till addiction, is being alone. So when you walk into the ark and you walk in alone, that's not a good sign, right? Don't walk into the ark alone. All right, what does that mean? Good question. So another question. We say live and let live, right? How's I'll live my life and you live your life, right? And the choices that you make, perhaps I don't appreciate them or even approve of them, but live and let live. Is that something that we should abide to? Or is there something that we need to strive beyond that? And what would that be? So if you know someone who's making harmful choices in their life, and they don't seem to change, and you've tried, to what end or to what extreme am I obliged to help out this person? And yeah, live and let live. They made their choices. I've tried. Any thoughts on that?
When the other person rejects you completely.
Let's say even they reject you completely. So what do? That's it. Move forward, right? Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. Let's learn from the Parsha.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I don't think the Torah Studies class is on Facebook.
Is it on
It's on YouTube, but not on Facebook.
On either Facebook?
Not on yours and not on CZK.
Interesting. Give me a second, folks. Let me see what's going on here.
It's on Zoom.
Oh, yeah, we're on Zoom.
We're also live in person. We're good.
Yeah, we were missing the Facebook feed from I think it was Rambam earlier. So
Interesting. Oh, I see an error occurred, it says. Okay, I'm seeing here that there's an error. It's on Twitter, on X. But there's some error over here, and I didn't realize, and I don't think I can do anything about it right now. So let just people know, put it up that it's just on YouTube. Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's not allowing me to fix it. Let's see if I did this. No. Some kind of error. All right. So it is. All right. So let's get to the Parsha so we can have an appreciation of some of the things we spoke about now. All right. Beautiful. Okay. So, the Torah describes Noach as a righteous man in his generation who was chosen to survive the flood and rebuild civilization. Oops. Let's go into the verses. These are generations of Noach. Noach was a righteous man, perfect in his generations. Noach walked with God. Noach begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt it was corrupt before God, and the earth was full of Hamas, is the Hebrew word, which means robbery. And God saw the earth, and behold, become corrupted, for all flesh, and corrupted its ways on the earth. And God said to Noach, we learned today all the intricacies here that Rashi explained in all these words, right? Flesh came before me, for the earth has become full of robbery, of Hamas, because of them, and behold, I am destroying them from the earth. Okay. So again, Torah describes him as a righteous person chosen to survive the flood and rebuild civilization, right? Now, what's key to us is the words in his generation. Let's read over here. What do you mean in his generation? He was righteous. So Rabbi Yochanan says, now we're quoting from the Talmud, which Rashi brings down, right? But we're quoting it directly from the Talmud. Rabbi Yochanan said, this is, by the way, it's a new season, new year. We're not doing Rashi Sichas like we did last year. Last year, we focused on Rashi, the nuance in Rashi, the exactingness in his understanding of the verse, being the simple meaning of the text. Now we're learning the Parsha, a Sicha from the Rebbe, but not necessarily, or usually it's not going to be focused on Rashi's teachings. It'll be focused on the lesson from the Parsha. So there's this unusual word, b'doirei sav. So Rabbi Yochanan says in his generation, which means his doirei sav, he was righteous, but not relative to those of other generations. Reish Lakish, which is his brother-in-law, by the way, says in his generation he was righteous. All the more so, he would have been righteous in other generations. Rab Chanina says, this is a parable for Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. To what is matter comparable? To a barrel of wine that was placed in a cellar where vinegar is stored. In its place, its fragrance is noticeable. But when it's not in its place, its fragrance isn't noticeable. So in other words, you're amongst vinegar, then in other words, you're amongst bad people, well, you're going to stand out as a good person, right? That's what Rabbi Chanina says about Rabbi Yochanan, that he was only righteous in his generation, but not in another generation. In other words, amongst vinegar, wine smells really good, right? Even if it's an inferior quality wine. Rabbi Isha says, there is a parable for Reish Lakish's opinion. To what is the matter comparable? To a flask of perfume that was placed in a location of filth. In its place, the fragrance is noticeable, and all the more so, it'd be in a location where there is perfume. Not exactly clear on that metaphor, because in a place of perfume, you already have the smell there. But I guess in a filthy place, you have a competing smell. So it smells good, but not so great. But if you put perfume in a place of other perfumes, so now it makes it even stronger, right? The fragrance is even stronger because you're with other perfumes. So when you're with other righteous people, right, you're going to be even more righteous. That's what he says, right? Yeah. When you're in a negative influence and you still remain righteous is one thing, but which is a great accomplishment, of course, right? But when you're in a place, like you said, with other perfumes, with other righteous people, so then your surroundings influence you, and you're going to get positive influence as a result, right? So what comes out? According to Rabbi Yochanan, he sees the word B'der Sav in his generation as a diminishment of his praise. He was righteous, but limited. His generation, he was righteous, right? In his generation, he was righteous. But compared to another generation, like Avraham Avinu's generation, wouldn't have been anything special. Does that make sense? Right? Reish Lakish says the opposite. He sees in his generation that's an added emphasis of praise. Why? Even in such a generation, he was righteous. Can you imagine when he would have had around him all righteous people? For sure, he would have been righteous. Right? Is that clear? So there's two questions here. One is okay, what's the deal here? What's the big deal? Why are we his generation? He would have been what's the point over here? What do we want to bring out? What's the message? Is it important to know what kind of righteousness he had? Obviously, Torah wants to teach us a message. What's the message here? And furthermore, Rabbi Yochanan's view is a little puzzling, because when you say in his generation, right, it's an added word that's not necessary, and it's obviously coming to say something. Why are you seeing it when he is a righteous person in a diminishment of his righteousness? Why not see it in the positive side? Right? Why not see it in the positive? If you're wicked, and you can say, okay, more wickedness. But if you're righteous, why diminish the righteousness? What leads them to that? And this is especially true because in this Torah portion also, we learned something very interesting. Manoach took the animals, right? 2 by 2, if you remember, right? Not all of them were 2 by 2. Some were 7 by 7. The pure ones, the ones that would be kosher in the future, that would be able to be brought as offerings, right? So when the Torah, though, speaks about the animals he's bringing, so he speaks about Torah, pure ones, and when it says about the animals that are not pure, it doesn't say tame, which means impure. It says she'inena tahira, that is not pure. And the Talmud tells us, why is that? Why does it use that term in the negative rather just say what it is, right? So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, a person should never express a crude matter as a formulation of a verse was distorted, as the formulation of a verse was distorted by the addition of 8 letters rather than have it express a crude matter, as is stated, from the pure animals and from the animals that are not pure. So the Torah adds 8 letters because it could have made it more concise by saying just impure, but it wants to teach us a lesson. If on animals you should not speak about them being impure, all the more so when it comes to people, you shouldn't speak about them in the negative. Right? Does that make sense? So if that's the case, then why Rabbi Yochanan chooses to see that the verse is speaking about a diminished righteousness only in his generation? We see the Torah always wants to see the positive. Is that clear? I see puzzled looks. What is not clear?
No, it's clear. It's like he's saying that to make a distinction, he is righteous, even though the generation is not.
No. 1 second. What did Rabbi Yochanan say? Rabbi Yochanan said he diminished his righteousness. Only in his generation he was righteous. In another generation with great people, he would not have been considered great. Our question is, why is he diminishing it, why is he looking down on his righteousness? That's the question, right? Further, we see in this week's Torah portion that when it speaks about an animal that's impure, it doesn't call it impure. It's not being crude. And it's all speaking about an animal, right? So if an animal you should speak, the Torah said, she'inena tahira, added letters, right? In order to teach us a lesson, don't speak in a crude way, right? And what's so crude about saying that an animal, you're not a kosher animal, right? Well, no, right? So the Torah is teaching us a lesson to not speak negative. So if you don't speak negative, where's your speech come from? Your thoughts. So why is Rabbi Yochanan thinking negative about Noach when he could have learned it just for the same, if you will, as Reish Lakish did, that it was positive statement about him? That's the question. Clear? Yeah? Yeah. Okay. Everybody online? Yes, we got it? Okay. Now, that was the Talmud. The Zohar also records a debate about Noach and says, Noach, he didn't protest to God that why are you destroying humanity? He didn't even pray for the people. Unlike Moshe Rabbeinu, who prayed for the people when God wanted to destroy them. Right? So Noach's generation, so the Talmud wants to explain that not Talmud, sorry, the Zohar, that Noach's generation didn't have ancestral merit. There was no merit in that generation. therefore was hopeless. So you can't blame Noach for not praying for the people, right? But that's one opinion. Rabbi Yitzchak argues and says, nonetheless, he should pray for the people, right? So here we have two opinions about Noach. One saying he was lacking because he didn't pray for the people, and others saying there was no point in praying for the people because it was a hopeless situation, right? Again, we can ask the same question. Why would we look at Noach in a negative light and saying that he didn't pray for the people? In fact, he didn't pray, right? Well, no, I shouldn't say in fact. No, let's put that aside. The Torah doesn't speak about him praying, right? So as a result, you could look at that and say, well, he didn't do his duty. Or maybe there was nothing to pray for. Why not? Why again why is there the opinion of Rabbi Yitzchak to look at it in a negative light to say that he should have prayed, even if it was hopeless? Is that clear? Okay. Okay, here we have it. Rabbi Yehuda says Noach wasn't to blame. The generation has no merits. Rabbi Yitzchak says no, he should have prayed regardless. And that's the debate. But we're left again with the same question. Okay. Now we know in Judaism, by Jews, that is, 2 Jews, 3 opinions, right? Don't be so eager to say that. How come I don't have over the capability of clicking to go to the next slide? By the way, it's not on, can you go into Restream? It's not on Facebook. There's some problem with it. Here. How did you, okay, that's good. No, share it now. Yeah. There you go. Okay, thank you.
I'll check the Facebook.
Yeah, it's not on Facebook right now. It's not on. And on Restream, it's saying that there's a difficulty. Okay. Okay. Yet, there's always an effort when there's difference of opinions that on the same issue, they're not actually a conflict. What does that mean? That they're not actually a conflict. Well, the Talmud itself says one sage said one thing and another said another, something else, but they're not arguing. They're saying different things, but not arguing. How could that be? Yeah, but they're saying different things.
They have different angle, different.
Yeah, did you?
Yeah, but then isn't that an argument? Why is that not an argument?
It doesn't collide.
Why?
Those all goes in the same direction.
Yeah, but what if you're saying two opposites? Noach, his righteousness was only in his generation. So says he. And he says his righteousness was in all generations. That's a direct contradiction. So how could you say that they're not arguing? Good question, right? So, well, you're right in what you're saying, but I'm not going to make it easy for you because we got to think this through. Because we have to think, no, because we have to think it through. We can't just make a statement, right? We have to back up a statement. So, first of all, metaphorically, we can understand it. We're all looking at the same book right now, and we have three opinions over here, right?
Yeah.
Your opinion is this is just brown. Your opinion is this is Taurus Menachem. And my opinion is Sukkot Teishu Shivas Yomim Kol Ezra B'Yisrael Yeshiv Sukkot. Who's right? All right. All different perspectives on the same book, on the same idea, on the same matter at hand, right? That's what it means. Now, so when our sages said this in the Talmud, often they didn't explain why they're not arguing. They left it for us to understand that, it's not an argument. It's a different perspective of the same thing, showing a different angle to teach us something different. Okay? So when we speak about the Talmud and the Zohar, they're speaking about who? Noach, right? Noach, was he only righteous in his generation or not? Was he wrong for not praying, or was he justified in not praying? Right? It's an argument. They're looking at it from two different angles that are not a contradiction. Even though it sounds like it's a contradiction, it's still not working. Huh?
I need you to approve, Rabbi, on your phone. Right.
On my phone?
Yes.
So here, take my phone. You approve? Okay. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay, so listen here, folks. This is an important idea that's quite unique, quite a unique idea. And that is as follows. When we look at the Torah, so there's two ways that we should look at it. I mean, it's many, but two basic ways. One is, who is Noach? The person. And then, who is Noach that the Torah is teaching us about? Two different perspectives of the same story. Is that clear? In other words, there is the historic Noach, and there is the Torah Noach. Right? And there are two different angles of the same storyline. All right? Because remember, we have a difficulty over here. What's the difficulty? Torah is speaking about an incident that happened many years ago, but yet it's part of the Torah, which the Torah means what? What does the word Torah mean? It comes from the word Horah, a guidebook, a lesson, right? So is it a lesson about the person, or is it a lesson of the Torah of the person? It's both. We have to see it on both angles. Is that clear? So, what does that mean? Noach, the person, was completely righteous. Was completely righteous. He didn't have a fault in it, in any manner. But Noach of the Torah, as Torah is teaching us a lesson, there's something that from him we shouldn't learn. That he was lacking, not because he was lacking. What in the storyline of for generations is something that's lacking. Okay. So the Rebbe suggests that Rabbi Yitzchak's critique of him wasn't about Noach himself, but how we would misunderstand the lesson from him. That's the important thing, right? Rabbi Yitzchak warns us not to draw a wrong lesson from him. And therefore, we can't just look at what Noach was historically, but how that impacts us. And he did pray. Who he was historically, it was not for him to pray. But who it is in the Torah that's a guidebook for me should not be a lesson that I should take out from that. Right? So Rabbi Yehuda is seeing him historically, he didn't do anything wrong. But the way he is placed in the Torah and the lesson that we learn from that is, no, you've got to pray. He didn't pray. Not that he didn't pray the historical Noach, but as it's placed in the Torah, teaching us a lesson, and so we should make sure not to make that mistake, right? And learn a lesson from it that you don't need to pray, that it's hopeless. Is that clear? So let's see over here. So the sages of praise Noach addressed his historical Noah. He remained righteous despite his generation and fulfilled everything expected from him in his time and context. The sages seem to limit Noah's praise, address our relationship with Noach, as Torah is teaching me. His circumstances were different from ours, so she would not emulate everything, especially regarding prayer. Is that clear? So answer number one over here. Debating Noach's righteousness shows that Torah is both describing his greatness in his time and teaching us a lesson for today. Let's see it. Oops. Oh boy. Okay. Let's see it in the Rebbe's words from the Sikha this week. Look at the Sikhas. Rabbi Yitzchak too agrees with the reason Noach didn't pray for his generation is because in his situation he simply couldn't. As the Zohar says, he didn't have anyone whose merit he could rely on, like Moses did. So this wasn't a personal failing in Noach. Who did Moshe have to rely on? The forebears. Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. He had great people before him. So he wasn't coming on his own. He wasn't alone in finding merit. He was connected and therefore had who to rely upon. He had no one. 10 generations from Adam, there's no one there. Rabbi Yitzchak's intention is only to prevent a possible misunderstanding in later generations, lest someone think that failing to pray for others isn't a flaw. That's why Rabbi Yitzchak insists that we must interpret the aspect of Noah's story as a shortcoming, not because it was a shortcoming of Noah himself, but to make it absolutely clear that failing to pray for others is a flaw in general. We must always do everything possible to pray for and seek mercy on behalf of another Jew. This is why Rabbi Yitzchak's view doesn't contradict the principle of judge every person favorably. Even if he agrees that Noah had no actual obligation to pray, he's simply emphasizing that for others in different circumstances, this is a real obligation. So the same thing when it comes to the debate between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish focuses on Noach himself, that Noach himself is strong despite the corruption around him, and he would have been even stronger in other generations. Rabbi Yochanan, he's focusing on the relationship that we have with Noach. So therefore he limits the praise, not to diminish Noach, but that we shouldn't take a wrong message from him. Okay. So what do we take away from this? So we spoke about earlier. You see someone who's lacking in their lives, morally lacking, spiritually lacking. So, the Western culture tells us live and let live, right? And especially if you've made an effort, you did what you could, and it seems you got nowhere. Okay, throw up your hands and listen. I did what I can. And that's it. When does that work? When you're alone. You have no other merit but your own. And interesting, if you see in our prayers, we never go on our own merit. Never. We say in the merit of, our forebearers. We never speak about our own merit. So what, Noach is going to go on his own merit? He's the only one. We always place, even for ourselves, on others, right? So Noach is alone. But that's a mistake for us to make today, because today we're not alone, right? Today we have forebearers, first of all. We're connected to our forebearers, and therefore, no matter how distant we may be, we're always connected. So the Rebbe says, there's a teachings from the sages that when you come to someone's home, you have to listen to your host, whatever they ask of you. You have to listen, except for one thing. If they tell you to leave, you don't have to listen. So who's the host? Our host. God Almighty is our host. So whatever God says, we got to listen to. Except if he says leave. You're on your own. You're alone. Leave, because when you leave, you're alone. You're not with God. No. That, we don't have to pay God. Not even when God is saying that to us. Leave my presence. Why? Because we're connected. And we're not alone. So what does that mean? What does that mean? If we're not alone with God for ourselves, so likewise, another person is not alone and they are with God, right? And God can't say to them, move on, no room for you. You got to leave my home. No. So what do? We do everything we can as we're connected to God. So likewise, another individual, another fellow Jew is likewise connected. And furthermore, see, there's another important point. He didn't have any merit because he didn't have any forebears who he was connected to. But there's another point. Jews are connected with each other. We are like one entity. The Jewish people are like one entity. So therefore, in a sense, when I'm praying for another person, it's really, I'm part of that prayer. Why? Because that person, that other fellow Jew, is a part of me. Right? So that person is a part of me. And therefore, just like I pray for myself, I can pray for them that they should also do tshuva, find the way, and come back closer to God. Any luck there?
I gotta disconnect and reconnect now, but I'm doing that. So-
Where? In Restream?
Completely disconnect, reconnect your channel and your page.
You mean to do it all over from scratch?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Okay.
Sorry.
No. So we got to try everything we can for a fellow Jew. And if there's nothing left because we've tried, we always have to pray. Right? Yeah. But there's a little difficulty with that. What does it mean, pray for someone to do tshuva? Is tshuva meaning repentance, right? Isn't tshuva something that a person has to choose? So what are we praying? To take away their freedom of will? And what are we praying? That what? They should do tshuva. How does that make sense?
Help them.
Well, no, one second. Help them is you try to encourage them, inspire them, and so on. We're not talking about the inspiration now, right? That's helping them, right? But let's say you did that and that didn't work. Now you're what? Praying that they should do tshuva, but tshuva is a choice. It's a freedom of will that we have for us to choose. So what does it mean to pray in order to have them do tshuva? How does that make sense? How do we understand that? So there's different commentators that explain this in different ways. One is we pray that the challenges that they have should be fewer or removed from them. Or, for example, they're in bad company, and that's why they went off track. So we pray to God that they should, that company they should lose, and they should find good company to be a part of. Right? That you can pray for. That will help them to be in good company that will bring them to tshuva. Right? Or you pray that right now they are lacking in moral clarity, that God should give them, a little hit in the head, that, they should have clarity and see the truth. In the end, it's still their choice of doing tshuva, right? But if they have a greater clarity of what the truth is, then there's a chance that they will choose to do tshuva, right? Actually, the fifth blessing in the Amidah, that's you cracking over there?
That's not beautiful. Everyone's looking at me.
No. So praying for someone's tshuva does not take away their free will. Rather, it expresses your personal care and concern for them, right? So look in davening every day, the fifth prayer in the Amidah, bring us back, our Father, to your Torah, draw us close, our King, to your service, and return us in complete tshuva before you. Blessed are you, God, who desires tshuva. So another way that we can make sense of this is when we understand that the Jewish people are one body. So when I'm praying, if my right hand is lame and I'm praying really, in a sense, almost for myself. So look what here, bring us back, not bring me back or bring you back. Why us? Why isn't it speaking in singular form? Because the Jewish people are not in singular form. we are united and bound up with each other as one entity, as one body. So when I'm praying that my right hand that might be hurting, right? It's really right, the right hand of the people. There might be a friend of mine who was my buddy right hand. It's really a part of me, right? As we've said many times, if I am me and you are you, then I'm not me and you're not you. But if I am you and you are me, then I am me and you are you. So when you look at the Jewish people as being a part of you, when you're praying for them, it's like you're praying for yourself. You're praying for yourself. And this is, I think, the highest level and the greatest thing. If I were to to describe personally, if I were to describe the Rebbe in human terms, right? Not in godly terms, but in human terms, right? For me, that would be that he cares deeply. And why does he care deeply? Because he senses, he feels, he is, if you will, in him the embodiment of all the Jewish people. And therefore, the pain that someone else is going through, the right arm, is his pain. It's not something separate from him. He doesn't feel alone. He feels connected to every single Jew. So it might be that the only thing he can do for that Jew is pray for them. Okay? He's going to do that in order to help them materially, physically, and spiritually. Whatever it is, he will do whatever is necessary. So that is the lesson that the Torah wants to teach us over here. Noach himself was a great man. He was alone. He didn't have ancestors. He wasn't a Jew and connected with fellow Jews. There was such a thing then. It was each man for themselves, right? It was a jungle, in a sense, really. But now that the Torah was given to the Jewish people, we are one entity, one people, so we're bound up with each other, which because I'm bound up, the reason I care for you, because you're a part of me. And you might say, oh, that's very selfish. Oh, okay, be so selfish. We should all be so selfish that we feel that another is a part of me, right? Where do we get that? We inherited that from our ancestors at before Mount Sinai, even from, right? Forefathers, foremothers, they were the embodiment of this. And they merited to give this to their offspring, their descendants. This was solidified in Mount Sinai, and therefore, being that we're bound up with each other in this manner, we care essentially because our bandwidth is so wide that it includes so much that that someone is in pain, someone is suffering materially, spiritually, or they're not even suffering. They think they're leading the good life, but their soul is suffering so deeply that they don't even recognize it. But it will come. It's not possible that someone, without getting close to God, could live a good, healthy life. It will come to bite at some point. At some point. It will. I don't mean as a punishment from God. I don't mean that. Not as a punishment from God, but as a reality, because that's living alone. And that's living alone. Now you might say, oh, that person lives for their family. They'll live for their community. That's good. That is good. But not sufficient. It's not sufficient. So this is a message. The Noach, he himself was amazing, but not to take the lesson from him. He didn't pray, right? He didn't have ancestors. He didn't have the connection to the past or to the future or to a people that you're not alone as a result of being part of the Jewish people. So much so that there's always someone who's going to feel your pain. The Rebbe is going to feel your pain. So Reb Zusha from Anipol lived in times of the Alter Rebbe. Actually, he gives an approbation to the Tanya. And he was with his brother Elimelech. They used to go long journeys back in the day for self-refinement, growth, and so on. And when he came into town, he was given news that his son Meir was very sick. And he came home and he asked his wife, "Oh, I heard Meir's sick." He said, "No, Meir's fine. He's outside playing." He says, "Oh, I heard that Meir, oh, that's Meir, the cobbler's. That's the cobbler's son, Meir, not our son." He said, oh, okay. Got himself. What do you mean, okay? How's it okay? Because it's not my son? It's another son? He realized, what kind of refinement did I just go through? If I could feel that someone else's son is sick and I'm okay, that it's not my son. If I'm me and you are you, then I'm not me and you're not you. In other words, he realized, what do you mean? We're one people. The right arm is hurting, then I'm in pain. And who feels that is a Rebbe. A Rebbe is Reish B'nai Israel, the head of the Jewish people. We don't feel this, in our soul, but this is a reality. And, we, at least if we're mindful of this and we're aware of this, that's what's important. But who feels it is a Rebbe? The Rebbe. And I've told the story before of Erev Pesach. Actually, let me, there's so many stories. Let me see which story to tell. Of the shliach in Europe, that Rabbi Chodakov calls him up and says, the Rebbe wants you to bring matzah to a Jew in this village, in this town, not village, that town. He says, yeah, but Pesach's in a few days. We've got, a couple hundred people coming to Pesach Seder. There's so much to organize. The Rebbe wants you to do this. 4 or 5 hour trek to go to this place. He looks, he can't find. Finally, he asks, says, "Oh yeah, in this place, there's one Jew that's there." He comes in, the Jew sees him, he faints. He says, "I've been living in this place for trying to run away from my Judaism, but still, I was always a proud Jew inside, but I didn't want to live a Jewish life." And the priest here has been after me for years. "Convert already." And I said, no, I'm a Jew. And one time he gave it to me and my heart says, "Listen, you're a Jew? Who cares about you? Not your God, not your people. You're long forgotten." That was a dagger in my heart I couldn't take. So I told him, "Give me a week." And now you just walked in here. The shliach walked in. And in half an hour, he was about to come because it'd be a week's time. And he was supposed to come. And here you are. The Rebbe says, drop everything for one Jew to bring them back home, to bring them close. Why? Because for the Rebbe, in his soul, he senses all of the other souls. We're insensitive, so we don't. But it doesn't take away from the reality. But he's sensitive to it, senses that soul, the pain, the anguish that they're going through. And because being so attuned, deeply cares, he sends off his shliach, who's got to prepare for Pesach, and he's got his own stuff. But here's a soul that needs to be taken care of, not to forget, not to leave them behind. Chaim l'chaim. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Hmm? Powerful. Powerful, powerful.
How about that? Our
Huh?
no, how about our non-Jewish friends or family? Or should we
There's
pray
no, that we're
much?
so no, so for non-Jewish people, right? We're talking about a very deep and profound connection, right? So for non-Jews, we're connected all the way back to Adam, and we have a responsibility to them, but it's not because of a one body of people. It's because they're created in the image of God, and they have the image of God, and therefore they have a purpose in God's creation that they need to fulfill. And so therefore we need to be there for them, right? It's not the same profound connection, and therefore, at some point, live and let live. At some point, be quite frank, am I praying for Hamas to do tshuva? Am I praying that a Nazi should do tshuva? Or they need to be destroyed? Right? Now, okay, that's the extreme, obviously. That's the extreme, right? Huh?
He regrets and will still be destroyed.
What?
I pray that he regrets and still pray also for him to be destroyed. But not full true, just like he regrets it.
But no, what my point is, do I do I feel that they're a part of me? No. Okay. So they're not, right? Do I feel that a Jew that may be completely distant from Judaism, so much so that actually attacks Judaism, I feel that person is a part of me. There was the head of, I might have told this story. I think I have. We're coming out from Simchas Torah. So it was 19, I forget the year it was. So this is the head of the Supreme Court in Israel. His name is Cohen. I forget his first name. He was so anti-religious, anything of Judaism, that in Israel, he would fight tooth and nail to destroy it. Huh?
He was gone.
on top of it, right? Oh, he was. I can't recall now. I have to find the story. What led him, and he came to the Rebbe for Hakafis. I think it's traditional that the embassy in New York comes to the Rebbe's Simchas Torah. Bibi was there for over 40 years ago when he was the UN ambassador, right? So they come to the Rebbe. It's like before Bibi was already, and he was before. This is before Bibi, right? They would come every Simchas Torah. How that happened, well, that began, I'm not certain. They have a very great respect for the Rebbe in Israel. Any case, he came. And the Rebbe gave him one of the verses in the Ataharesas to say. And he was a learned person. It wasn't he didn't know Torah. He knew Torah, but defiant of it. And for one of the Akafas, the Rebbe gave him a Sefer Torah. And he was an older man. He wasn't a young man then. And so they wanted to give him a smaller Torah. The Rebbe said, give him a heavy one. And that hakafa lasted 45 minutes. It was long. And the Rebbe gave him like such encouragement and such. Afterwards, he said, I never experienced anything like this in my life. He says, this was like, awesome is not the word. He says, I'm an old man. I'm not really going to change my ways. But I want to have a Jewish burial when I die. And he wasn't so anti. And so, right? So, like, other Hasidic groups or other religious people, this guy, hate completely. Why? Because their bandwidth isn't large enough to include someone who's a Jew who is the antithesis of you in belief. But what binds us is not our belief, as it does in other religions and faiths, or even by other religious Jews and what they feel. What binds them is your belief in your observance, level of observance, or scholarship, and so on, right? No, that's not what binds us. Binds us is neshama. So his neshama was in great pain. He didn't know it because he wasn't attuned to his neshama. He was so living in dark. But that's reality. Yeah. And because the Rebbe truly cares, because he's truly connected to everybody, he realizes what's going to make him, give him a path to some kind of tshuva, which he did some form, right? Some form of tshuva. How? Give him a heavy Sefer Torah, a long dance, but include him. Because he is included. Include him. So comes Rabbi Yechanan, comes Rabbi Yitzchak, and they want to make sure that the Torah's eternal teachings us don't make a mistake in what the Torah is coming to say here. That there might be for someone you don't have to pray for and care for them. So they have to come and say, even though it's like, you don't want to say that about Nayach, but we have to make sure that we don't learn the wrong message. Noach didn't have a past. He didn't have great people before him that he was connected to, that he was a part of. He didn't have the people that he's a part of. But we do. We have a great past. Great people before us. Holy people. And that we're a part of, not just the past, but in the present. And therefore, we're not alone. and which don't make anybody feel alone. Imagine this, Mr. Cohen, right? They're never going to make him feel alone. You're not wanted in the people of our people. Who needs you? You good for nothing lowlife. Make him feel alone. He deserves it. Because look what he fights against Jewish faith, Jewish religion. But in fact, he's not alone. He's part of the people. We're one entity. So it doesn't make him feel alone. Give him a heavy Torah so he knows that Torah is, connected to. That's what we are. That's what we're all about. All right, folks. Message clear? Unbelievable. Message is clear on. Oh, yeah, it's popping up over here. I see. All right. Beautiful.
Thank you, Rabbi.